Hello again. My name is Sam Robinson, and I am the Gnostic Tigritist, and this is the Gnostic Tigritist podcast. Thank you for joining us tonight. In our last podcast, we were going over thought forms, egregores, and the planes of causality, which specifically would be, at least in that video, the mental planes and the astral or desire planes of existence. And we went over how thought form creation occurs and how if a thought form is well concentrated by either an individual or a group, you can create what's called an egregore, or in the East they call it a tulpa. And this is a concentrated and energized thought form that has been so well energized and so deeply concentrated and focused into a self-sustaining entity or semi-self-sustaining entity, and the thought form starts to take on almost a life of its own and become independent and semi-independent of the individuals or groups of individuals that generated this entity like thought form. And this can occur either through deliberate occult practice, say like as in an esoteric order or an occult temple, like the like Dion Fortune's I think it's called the Order of the Light, and it was an esoteric Christian and occult order that she created back in the 30s and 40s, 1930s, 40s, and she explains, say, like in her book on ritual introduction to ritual magic, and esoteric orders in their work and the path of the initiation. She explains how a thought form is generated in a group setting and through occult practitioners who have done a large degree of study in a long years long level of meditation and visualization and symbol concentration. And they do it in that setting. They do it as a group. They make group thought forms, and they have a group energy body, so to speak. And her book was fascinating. An Introduction to Ritual Magic. She explains what occurs, what the process, and what the system of occult practice is like when you are saying doing a group occult ritual and a magical working as a singular group that has contained its energy within the single group itself, and thus are able to create a much greater degree of focus and concentration of their occult energies onto any thought form that they create. And so how that works, this is one way of creating thought forms in a group setting. This is the traditional way and probably the best way. If you can even join an occult order like that now today, I don't even know if you can. I mean, I guess it's possible, but the way she explains it is that after years of working together as a single ceremonial group of magical practitioners and light occultists, when they wanted to perform a group ceremonial magical ritual, they would, of course, gather together in a very specific place, say in a temple or in the place that they want to specifically concentrate their energy. But normally it is in a ceremonial temple or building, like a lodge, not like a Masonic lodge, but like an occult lodge, where they have already, to a great degree, worked and practiced ceremony and magical ritualism in that place. And they would bring, depending on whatever they're working on, they would bring the elemental types in terms of objects to aid them in their focus and concentration of the energy of that element. And they would also prepare the, so to speak, the architecture of the room and where they were going to engage in that practice ahead of time, to where each thing is symbolically representative of the actual forces that they want to draw down or to contact in this ceremonial ritual. It could be anything, but that is another, it's kind of like a mental focal point for their concentration and energy that represents the element or force that they are going to manifest, contact, or project to. So when the group gets together to engage in a ceremonial ritual, they all have to sit down and visualize simultaneously, all of them together. Say it's 7 people. All 7 visualize the exact similar images or visions at the same time. So they all must say they're going to get, say they're trying to contact fallen soldiers from World War One. They would all have to visualize the exact soldier in the exact way, with the exact likeness, and in the exact place, identically, all at the same time, together as one group mind, as one group, so to speak, mental body, an energy group mind body. And they could go on, who knows how long, it could go on for like an hour visualizing these things. And this creates what could be called, not in that exact instance, obviously they were contacting spirits that are, trapped upon earth due to dying in a extremely grievous way through World War One. But if they say wanted to create an egregore or a tulpa, they would do the same process. They would sit down and visualize the exact thing that they want and form the group entity into a singular, cohesive thought form, as one, so to speak, as one mind. And this is exactly why in a lot of esoteric orders they do not allow outsiders in without any vetting or a period of, decently long probation, to vet them and to then slowly bring them into the um, group energy bodies that they have created as a singular group. Thus, if they don't do it that way, any sort of outside interference with their group mind, group mental body will disrupt it. Anyway, any sort of exterior interference that has nothing to do with that group, that's how sensitive it is. It's extremely sensitive, to where it's not very difficult for a new member, if they just allowed them in at, without vetting, without probationary periods, without slowly and gradually bringing them closer and into the group mind. If they just introduce them within a week or a few days, they would be basically unable to function as an esoteric order, because their group mind will have been fractured and disrupted by the mental body and astral body of the new individual that they didn't bring in slowly enough. So this is kind of how that works. So now let's take this into another direction. That is the nature of group thought forms, and group ritual magic. And while I know that's all very interesting, what I specifically want to focus on tonight is the planes of existence that these ceremonial magical rituals, whether an individual or as a group, occurs, where these actually take place, and which bodies are utilized to cause them to take place, which ones are the vehicle for expression beyond the physical that you would utilize to contact the etheric region or the astral desire region. Because last time we went over the planes of abstract thought and planes of concrete thought, and where we said that the fourth level of the plane of concrete, or sorry, yeah, concrete thought, the fourth rung is the, so to speak, focal point between for man, between spirit and matter. The fourth plane of concrete thought is the linchpin and the, so to speak, the keystone for all that occurs between spirit and matter. One goes, the higher regions are above, going towards spirit, and all the lower self and all the, so to speak, more temporal bodies go down the other direction below the fourth plane of concrete thought. There's three levels below that. Then there's the seven planes of the desire world, and then the four ethers and the three chemical regions down into materiality and physical manifestation. So the fourth plane of concrete thought is the plane where these forces pretty much are determined to be spiritualized by the higher self, or to fall into the lower self and manifest through the lower principles of the human being or the individual. So we went over that last time. This time, I want to go over some more of the actual planes themselves, and we'll start with the etheric region. So, the etheric region of the physical world, as soon as we enter this realm of nature, we are in the invisible and tangible world where our ordinary senses fail us. Hence, this part of the physical world is practically completely unexplored by material science. And this is Max Heidel's Rosicrucian Cosmic Conception. This is written in like 1911 or 1915. They still haven't, as far as I know, truly tapped into that region. I think they've tapped into some of the lower ethers, and through the internet, and maybe, frequency based and artificial intelligence, and maybe quantum computing and quantum mechanics, but that's theoretical. So I'm still not. Now we're going to say that in hidden projects they haven't done that. It's very possible they have, but for the masses and the mainstream information and knowledge that's been, released, the ether is still totally unacknowledged and unrecognized as even existing, and was supposedly put to death, as it were, by the theory of relativity of Einstein, who actually honestly kept the secret doctrine on his bed, on his table in his office every day. The secret doctrine of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, which obviously talks about all this stuff. He is rumored, and it has been supposedly verified by his niece, who visited the Indian in India Theosophical Society, and I think it's an IDAR, uh, when she was in that area, because she wanted to see the place and the movement that had um, been related to the book he kept on his desk table in his office every day without fail, which was the Secret Doctrine. So relativity has not by any means destroyed the ether, and the ether theory is, I mean, I guess you could call it a theory, but I don't see it as a theory. There is a medium, I so to speak, of great plasticity just beyond the realm of physicality, and is considered to be, so to speak, also physical by occultism. But to all intents and purposes, for us, it is not physical, because we cannot see it, we cannot measure it, we cannot, you know, touch it, feel it, or even, I mean, we can't even really analyze it unless you start to work on your spiritual bodies, like your ether body and your astral bodies, and do a lot of practice and self development through meditation. So, bear in mind, mainstream says it basically does not exist. Yet clearly it does, because some of the greatest scientists believed in it, and were studying it, absolutely studying the true depths of it to help ascertain and generate their theories and their perspective of the world, their worldview. So, in the ether, in the etheric region, by me, okay, so material science finds that it is necessary to account in some way for the transmission of electricity with or without wires. It is forced to postulate some substance of a finer kind of matter than it knows, and that substance was called ether 100 years ago. They don't really know whether it exists, and they are not really, I've never been able to devise any sort of, containment vessel or laboratory method of, bottling this ether into anything to show that it exists. I'd say the closest may have been Wilhelm Reich with his orgone energy, but that might not have been the ether. Also, there was John Worrell Keeley with his interetheric force from the 1870s and 80s that Blavatsky talks about in her Secret Doctrine, who was, unable to mass produce it and was, according to Blavatsky, not going to be allowed by the occult schools and orders and secret societies to actually produce that because it was too dangerous and would obviously be used in wartime. So look up John Will Keeley and disregard what they say about him being a hack, or look up Blavatsky's one chapter on John Will Keeley of Philadelphia and his study of interetheric energy and vibrations. He's brilliant. He was before Tesla. So they had to, basically they had to postulate some sort of medium of fine matter, rarefied matter and substance that was the plane of electrical transference. It was too elusive for their laboratories as it is today. You cannot measure, weigh, or even analyze it by any apparatus today or back then that I'm aware of. And of course, what Max Heindel and many others state is it's not about inventing machinery or technologies to try to analyze or measure any or quantify the ether or these higher planes of reality and their types of substance and energies. It's about basically self-development of the actual scientist. That is what needs to occur. Improving the investigator, the improving and the esoteric development of the actual investigator of these planes of existence is what actually needs to be the true and one methodology for their study, obviously, because we all have the latent potentialities and abilities and principles to actually investigate these planes of existence if they will only be developed. Not that, of course, it's not easy, but if scientists want to study these actual planes, these etheric planes and astral desire planes and the mental planes, obviously they're not going to go higher than that. They'll be lucky if they even get beyond the first two. They'd have to basically generate and tap into their own latent potential through their astral and etheric body and their mental body of their manas, as they would say, their Kama Rupa, and their, something called the vital body, the ether body. And once they improved and developed and, increase the potency of their connection to those three bodies, then they could actually self-investigate any of these planes, just like all these occultists have done throughout history, to verify for themselves and then bring it back down into the material realm and give us their theories and their information and knowledge that they've gathered. They don't do that. Obviously, they want to create some sort of technology to do that, or they want to create, as the transhumanists do, an inter-etheric technological society and world that is artificially generated with frequency-based technology, as some would say, etheric technology, and create its own artificial etheric field of energy, and then connect themselves to it and connect all of us to it, connect the entire planet to it, to do it that way instead of actually doing the hard work to actually tap into the real etheric planes and using their own etheric body. The trained clairvoyant, the ether is as tangible as solids, liquid, and gases as the chemical region is to ordinary beings. He sees that the vital forces which give life to the mineral forms of plant, animal, man flow into these forms by means of four states of ether. The name and specific functions of these four ethers are as follows. We have the chemical ether, we have the life ether, we have the light ether, and we have the reflecting ether. Okay, then we'll go over them more specifically. The chemical ether is, first of all, both positive and negative in its manifestations. They are specifically associated with the processes of assimilation and excretion of matter and of nutrients. Assimilation is the process whereby the different nutritive elements of food are incorporated into the body of plant, animal, and man. This is carried out by the forces which we shall become acquainted with later. They work along the positive pole of the chemical ether, attracting the needed elements and building them into the forms concerned. These forces do not act blindly nor mechanically, but in a selective way, thereby accomplishing their purpose, which is the growth and maintenance of the body of the individual. So the ether body, specifically the chemical ether, the chemical aspect of our ether body, which I guess you could say there might be four aspects to our ether body, but I've never seen that. But let's say there is. The chemical ether, the chemical aspect of our ether body, or what one of the four expressions of the ether body, is the maintenance and growth of the physical body. That's why some call it the etheric double, or the doppelganger. That's why, and also they call it the vital body. Obviously, why would they call it that? Because it is the body that is closest to the physical body and is also modeled specifically. Well, the physical body is modeled on the ether body, but it's the one that looks most like our actual physical body when seen clairvoyantly, and is obviously is what's vital to the body is the maintenance and continued growth of the actual physical body. So the vital body is a perfect and apt name for it. On the negative pole of the chemical ether, excretion is carried on by the forces of the same kind, but working along the negative pole. By means of this pole, they expel from the body the matter that is no longer necessary and useless for the maintenance of the physical body, or that is unfit for use and can potentially be harmful, have outlived their usefulness, and needs to be expurgated from the system. This, like all other processes independent of man's volition, is also wise and selective and not merely mechanical in its operation, as seen in the action of the kidneys, where the urine is filtered. We'll go into that. Then, so let's go back over that. The chemical ether, and that aspect, I guess you could say, of your ether body is as two poles, positive and negative. The positive one is about assimilation of the nutrients and necessary substances for the maintenance and growth of the physical body. And the second aspect on the negative pole is for basically purging and discarding and getting rid of, so to speak, material refuse and useless or unfit matter that no longer serves the purpose of growth and maintenance of the body. So, obviously, extremely important for the maintenance of our physical body in the physical realm. Who would have thought that the etheric realm, the first etheric realm, and that one of the aspects of your ether body is to do that, is the maintenance of it. It's the most closely aligned principle of all seven to the lowest principle of your physical vehicle is the ether body. The life ether is the avenue for the operation of the forces which have for their object the maintenance of the entire species. Okay, I know that sounds a little bit epic and grandiose, but all it really is referring to is actually propagation. The propagation of the species, the life ether. So, and also has a positive and negative pole. The processes working along the positive pole are those which work in the female during gestation. They enable her to do the positive, active work of bringing forth a new being. On the other hand, the forces which work along the negative pole of the life ether enable the male to produce his stuff, those little guys. So, the positive pole of the life ether is for female gestation and I guess you could say basically pregnancy and menstruation, and the negative pole of the life ethers for the male or masculine side of propagating the species through the generation of his semen. Like the chemical ether, in the work on the impregnated ovum of the animal or man, because this works for animal and man, or upon the seed of a plant, also works for because the plant, animal, and man all have an ether body. The forces working along the positive pole of the life ether produce male plants, animals, and men. See, that's interesting. It flipped. While the forces which express themselves through the negative pole generate females. Very interesting. So the let's say that again. The positive pole are those which work with the female during gestation, and the negative pole are those which work with the man to produce his sperm. But when it comes to the actual impregnated ovum of the animal or man or the seed of a plant, it switches, and the positive pole produces men and the negative pole women, which is very, very interesting that it flips right there. Next, you have the light ether. This ether is both positive and negative, as all things are, and the forces which play along its positive pole are the forces which generate that blood heat in the higher species of animals, such as mammals and in man, which makes them individual sources of heat. So it basically produces our blood and our hot blood as opposed to cold-blooded. The forces which work along and that's the positive pole. Those that work along the negative pole of the light ether are those which operate through the senses. So this gives us our sense perception, which makes sense because we sense light. The light ether works. Our senses operate through the light ether, which makes a lot of sense because that's how we see anything at all in the first place. Manifesting as the passive functions of sight, hearing, tasting, and smelling. So our five senses. Yeah. They also build nurse. Yeah. So our five senses operate through the use of an interaction with the light ether, which and to me is quite logical when it comes to of the four ethers, which one would be the one that would be related to our five sense perception ability and potency. Well, the light has a lot to do with it, specifically sight, obviously, but apparently it's involved with everything else: hearing, tasting, seeing, smelling, touching. Now, in the cold-blooded animals, the positive pole of the light ether is the avenue of the forces which circulate the blood, and the negative forces have the same function in regard to the eye as in the case of the higher animals and man. Where eyes are lacking, the forces working in the negative pole of the light ether are perhaps building or nourishing other sense organs as they do in all that have sense organs. So the positive pole in the plant and plant life causes the circulation of the juices within the plant, which I guess would be chlorophyll. Thus, in the winter, when the light ether is not charged with sunlight as in the summer, the sap ceases to flow until the summer sun again invests the light ether with its force. So the sun powers the light ether. That actually makes a lot of sense. The forces which work along the negative pole of the light ether deposit the chlorophyll, the green substance of the plant, and also colors of flowers. In fact, all color in all the kingdoms is deposited by means of the negative pole of the light ether. Therefore, animals have the deepest color on the back, and flowers are deepest colored on the side, the side turned towards the light itself, the sun. Next, you have the reflecting ether, which is going to be like very much connected to our ability to remember, to our memories, and to the memory of nature as well. That's why it would be a reflection. It has heretofore been stated the idea of the idea of the house which has existed in the mind can be recovered from the memory of nature even after the death of the architect. This was an example, an analogy he gave earlier. Everything that has ever happened has left behind it an effaceable and immutable picture in the reflecting ether medium of in the reflecting ether plane of existence. And it's the fourth it's the fourth one. It's the highest etheric plane. Right above that is the astral plane. As the giant ferns of the childhood of Earth have left their pictures in the coal beds through fossils, the thoughts and acts of men are eternally, immutably recorded by nature in this reflecting ether, where the trained clairvoyant may read their story with an accuracy commensurate with their psychic ability to read the record. Now, this may or may not be the Akashic records, but if it is, it's certainly a lower aspect of it. The reflecting ether deserved its name for more than one reason, for the pictures in it are but reflections of the memory of nature and of everything that's occurred in nature. The real memory of nature is, the real memory of nature is found in a much higher realm. It's just a reflection of the memory of nature, a reflection. It is still the realm of Maya, of illusions. A reflection is not the same as the actual image. It is a simulacrum of the image. It is, a fractal of the true image, which would be in the higher realms and the actual Akashic records. But I guarantee you there's plenty of New Age teachers and false gurus that say they actually are gifted enough and clairvoyant enough to even get this far. They would read this reflecting ether and think that they have found the Akashic records, when they've really only found a reflection of the true Akashic records, and would never realize that because they haven't studied. They're just kind of grasping blindly and throwing themselves into the fray without proper training or proper study to understand that this is the reflect, that there is even another place that seems like it's Akashic records, but it's just the reflecting ether, the highest etheric plane. While the real Akashic records are far, far higher in terms of the plane that it resides on. I mean, Akasha exists in 7 rays and 7 planes, and is an extremely spiritualized aspect of the cosmos. To truly read the Akashic records, you have to be an adept, like Rudolf Steiner. In this reflecting ether, no thoroughly trained clairvoyant cares to read, as the pictures are blurred and vague compared to those found in the higher realms. Those who read in the reflecting ether are generally those who have no choice, who in fact do not know in what they are reading. As a rule, ordinary psychometrists and mediums obtain their knowledge through the reflecting ether, and that's what I'm talking about. To some slight extent, the people of the occult school in the first stages of his training also reads the reflecting ether, but he is warned by his teacher of the insufficiencies and of this etheric plane as a means of acquiring actually truly correct information, so he does not draw wrong conclusions. So they warn him ahead of time if you're actually in a training in an occult school. This ether is also the medium through which thought makes an impression upon the human brain. It is most intimately connected with the fourth subdivision of the world of thought. This is the highest of the four subdivisions contained in the region of concrete thought, the one that I mentioned earlier in this video, and is the homeworld of the human mind. There, a much clearer version of the memory of nature is found than in the reflecting ether. The fourth plane of concrete thought is the, so to speak, the almost the middle ground of the entire system of seven regions, because you have the physical and the etheric, which is all kind of considered physical. There's seven planes of those. Then there's seven desire or astral planes. There's seven mental or thought planes. And then you have four more regions after that. The region of life spirit, the region of divine spirit, the region of, and at the very top, the region of the divine realm. And then there's one other realm that I cannot seem to recall at the moment, but there's seven total. Thus, the fourth region of concrete thought is directly in the middle and forms the connecting link between mind and spirit and matter and your higher self. It was very important. And there you can actually potentially read some of the true memory of nature. Okay, so those are the four ethers. You have the chemical ether, assimilation and excretion, maintenance of the body, and purging of unfit material substance so that it does not poison the body. Growth and assimilation, purging, and removing of unfit material. You have the life ether, which is engaged in propagation of gestation and the creation of the male sperm. Also, the creation of male and female is based in the life ether. Then you have the light ether, which is the etheric plane of our senses, of our sense perception. It is, for all five senses. And then you have the reflecting ether, which is the memory of nature and provides a reflection of the true memory of nature and is the plane that most mediums are tapping into whenever they engage in clairvoyant practice. Also, light ether is the place in the plane that is the root source of our blood and our heat of the blood, the hot-blooded nature of our species as mammals, as well as the cold-blooded nature of the non-mammalian animals on Earth. So there you have the etheric planes and why they are at least necessary knowledge, why it's necessary to know about these four planes beyond liquid, solids, and gases. And that is obviously because if you want to think about it in this certain light, the ether body does all four of those, engages and interacts with and exists on those four planes of chemical ether, life ether, light ether, and the reflecting ether. Your ether body has four expressions and four, so to speak, levels of potentiality for maintaining the body, generating the species, maintaining the species through propagation, retaining memories, and generating five sense perception and hot blood. So the ether body does all those things, and they do them through the four planes of the ether realm. It's very interesting to me how no one really speaks of the etheric body as having four planes of expression and, so to speak, four aspects. Next is the astral body or some call the desire body and the desire world, an astral plane. The desire world has 7 subdivisions called regions, but unlike the physical world, it does not have the great divisions corresponding to the chemical and etheric region. The desire stuff in the desire world persists through its 7 subdivisions or regions as material or substance for the embodiment, for the vehicle, as a vehicle for desires. As the chemical region is the realm of form, and as the etheric region is the home of the forces carrying on the life activities in those forms, enabling them to live, survive, and maintain themselves as a species through propagation. So the forces of the desire world are working in this quickened but yet still dense body compared to the higher principles, impel it to move in this or that direction. Thus, without desire, there is no will to action. Desire has to come first. If there were only the activities of the chemical and etheric regions of the physical world, you would have forms with having life, able to move, but without any reason to go and move at all. There would be no, so to speak, incentives for action, the will to act. They would remain immobilized, because without desire, there is no actionable intention to do anything. Thus, the desire world or astral plane through the Kama Rupa body is also extremely pivotal to understanding yourself and the nature of these planes of the cosmic superstructure. The incentive is supplied by the cosmic forces active in the desire world, and without this activity playing through every fiber of that body, urging action in this direction or that, there would be no experience and no moral growth. So this is extremely significant and an important maybe one of the most important things to understand is that the desire body is where moral growth occurs and experience is gained. The functions of the different ethers would take care of the growth of the form, but moral growth would be entirely lacking. So if I was a dark occult social engineer, what would I absolutely attack or lay an assault upon? I would do it upon the moral activities and aspects of the desire body, or astral body, while also impeding or staunching the ability for the etheric body to do the 4 things that it needs to do, while paralyzing the desire body or redirecting its current of energy into desires of its own generation, of its own engineering. Desires that will not further the spiritual evolution of humanity as a species and as a being. Desires that would set a new amoral foundation of worldly desires as a societal and socio-cultural foundational framework and generate that on a mass scale. Evolution would be an impossibility both as to form and life, for it is only in response to the requirements of spiritual growth that forms evolve into higher states. It is only through spiritual growth, thus moral growth, and the tapping into the latent potentials for self-development of the lower bodies, but specifically the desire body, which leads to spiritual evolution as an individual, spiritual growth and self-development as an individual, and spiritual evolution as an entire species. Thus, we see the great importance of this realm of the cosmic superstructure of nature, of the higher realms of nature. Desires, wishes, passions, and feelings express themselves in the matter of the different regions of the desire world or astral plane, as form and feature express themselves in the chemical and physical world. They take forms which last for a longer or shorter time depending on the intensity of the desire generated. The distinction between the forces and the matter is not so definite as in the physical plane. The ideas of force and matter are identical or almost interchangeable in the desire worlds. To the extent we can say this, the desire world consists of force matter. It is 1 degree less dense than the physical world, but it's entirely the wrong idea. If you think of it as simply finer physical matter, it's not. It's not physical at all. It is an extreme plasticity, constantly shifting and reshaping itself, molding itself like at rapid speed.